If you've seen the Toy Story movies, you probably noticed that there's a lot more going on beneath the surface than just fun adventures. One of the big themes they explore is abandonment, how the toys deal with the fear of being left behind or forgotten. In this video, let's talk about some of these deeper, more complex feelings the characters go through. Let's start with Woody. At the center of the very first movie is Woody's deep fear of being replaced or abandoned. For years, he has been the favorite toy, the one that Andy loves the most. Because of that, Woody is not just a beloved toy but also the leader of the other toys. He feels safe and important in that role. But then, Buzz comes along. And Buzz isn't just any new toy. He's flashy, new, and quickly becomes super popular with Andy. For Woody, this shakes his whole world. He suddenly worries that he might be forgotten or pushed aside, no longer the special one. This fear that he could be abandoned or left behind is what drives a lot of his actions and struggles in the first film. Now, Buzz's story is a little different but just as emotional. When Buzz first shows up, he doesn't even realize he's a toy. He truly believes he's a real space ranger on a mission. So, his form of abandonment isn't about being replaced by another toy, it's about something much more personal. When he eventually learns that he's not a real space ranger and that he's actually just a toy, it's a huge shock to his identity. It's like his whole world crumbles. He loses the thing that gave him purpose, value, and meaning. In a way, Buzz is abandoned by his own sense of self. Everything he thought he was, everything that made him feel important, suddenly disappears. Their struggles really mirror each other. Woody was terrified of losing the love of a child, the kind of emotional abandonment that comes from being left behind or forgotten. Meanwhile, Buzz was grappling with a different kind of emotional pain, the loss of his own belief in who he is and what makes him special. Now, let's talk about Jessie's story, which is probably one of the most heartbreaking examples of abandonment in the Toy Story series. Jessie once had a wonderful time with her owner Emily. They shared so many joyful moments, they laughed together, played games, and had a really close bond. She wasn't just a toy, she was a treasured friend. But then, Emily grew up. Kids do that, they move on, their interests change, and the toys that once meant the world to them get left behind. Jessie wasn't broken or destroyed like some might imagine. Instead, she was simply forgotten. For years, she sat under the bed, ignored, gathering dust, waiting to be loved again. And when Emily finally did find her, it wasn't to bring her back into the family for love and play. Instead, Jessie was given away, passed on, like something no longer needed. That feeling of being forgotten and then passed aside is a deep kind of abandonment. It's sad and lonely, and it shaped Jessie's character in a big way. Then there's Stinky Pete, also known as the Prospector. His story stands out from all the other toys because it's different in a very important way. Unlike Woody, Buzz, or Jessie, Stinky Pete was never really loved or played with at all. He spent decades sitting unopened in a sealed mint condition box on a shelf. He never got to experience what it's like to be someone's favorite toy, to be part of a child's world. This lack of love and attention shaped who he became. While the other toys had something to lose, memories of love and times when they mattered, Stinky Pete had nothing. He was never chosen, never cherished. And because of that, he became bitter and resentful. His pain comes not from losing love, but from never having had it in the first place. This makes his story unique and adds a whole new layer to the theme of abandonment in the movies. Then there's Lotso, or Lotso Huggin' Bear, whose story brings a darker, more bitter side of abandonment to light. Lotso was once a beloved toy, just like Woody or Buzz or Jessie. But one day, he was accidentally left behind and replaced. Now, this is where his story takes a very different turn. Unlike the others we talked about, who felt abandoned but managed to keep hold of hope or love, Lotso's pain turned into something much worse. Being replaced didn't just hurt him, it made him bitter, angry, and deeply resentful. He let that bitterness take over and it changed him into a completely different toy, a toy who became manipulative, controlling, and even cruel. His story shows how abandonment can affect people in very different ways. Sometimes it leads to growth and healing, but sometimes it can turn someone bitter and cause them to hurt others. There's also the bittersweet goodbye Andy says to his toys. This kind of abandonment isn't about pain or anger, it's just a natural part of growing up and moving on. Andy has grown up, he's ready to go off to college, and he doesn't play with his toys anymore. But even though he's leaving his childhood behind, he still loves his toys deeply. Instead of throwing them away or forgetting about them, Andy chooses to pass them on to someone who will love them just as much, Bonnie, a little girl who will play with them and care for them. This moment is full of emotional maturity and kindness because it's not really a goodbye, but more like passing on a treasure to someone new. Andy understands that these toys deserve to be loved, and by giving them to Bonnie, he's making sure their stories and love continue. There's also Forky's story, which introduces a really interesting and deeper idea called existential abandonment. Forky isn't a typical toy like Woody or Buzz. He was created by Bonnie, the little girl who owns the toys, but he was made out of random craft supplies, like a spork, pipe cleaners, and googly eyes. Because of this, he doesn't really see himself as a toy at all. In fact, he believes he's trash. He keeps trying to throw himself in the garbage because he feels like he doesn't deserve to exist as a toy. His whole journey in the movie is about figuring out his own value and learning that he's important just as he is. Woody helps him understand that being loved and having a purpose matters, even if he's made from bits and pieces other toys might find odd. Now let's talk about Gabby. She's a vintage doll who lives in a creepy old antique store, and her box is cracked and worn out. Her story is about a different kind of rejection, one that comes from not feeling good enough because she's broken. She believes that no one will ever love or choose her unless she fixes the little defect in her voice box. This need to be perfect is what drives her actions throughout the film. Her story highlights another form of abandonment, that painful feeling of being rejected not because someone stopped loving you, but because you don't meet certain standards of worthiness or perfection. It's a tough kind of loneliness that comes from feeling excluded for who you are. But the biggest and most meaningful change actually comes from Woody himself. For the first time in all the films, Woody isn't the favorite toy anymore. Bonnie doesn't play with him as much, and that shakes his whole sense of identity. Woody is faced with a major choice. Does he keep holding on to his old life as a child's favorite toy, or does he let go and find a new path? In the end, he chooses to leave that life behind. He decides to join Bo Peep, a toy who's been helping other lost toys find new homes and happiness. This is a huge moment because it's not about abandonment in the usual way. Woody isn't being left behind or forgotten by someone else. Instead, he's taking control and choosing to let go himself, before anyone else makes that decision for him. He's no longer just a toy waiting for a child's love. He becomes something new, someone who helps others and finds new purpose outside of being the favorite toy. This is one of the reasons the Toy Story movies are so powerful and complex. They don't just tell simple kids' stories, they dig deep into real complicated emotions like abandonment, identity, and growing up.